Okay, are you guys ready for more pain, more trauma? Are you guys ready? In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is part 10 in a 20-part series I am doing covering the Primarchs in order of the legions. Do you need to have seen the other parts to understand this one? No, but it would make me happy. Okay, so a few people are going to ask why I skipped past the second legion, as well as call this a 20-part series, because if you do the math and you get rid of the second and the 11th part, that means that at most I'm gonna have 18 parts. Shut up and sit down, and I have a plan. You should trust me more often. It's not good to not trust people. Don't worry, my little lumpies. I have a plan, and you shall learn it someday, just not today. Cut back at like part 20 and all will make sense. I can guarantee you it's not nearly as complicated as you think it's going to be.
Okay.
If you are a 40k fan of more or less any depth, then at some point in your existence you have thought to yourself, hey yo, what happened to those two Primarchs? And the answer is kind of all over the goddamn place, because the two missing Primarchs as well as the two missing legions have so many different thought processes around them. So for one, what is the main theory and the information?
Is that fucking Ricardo?
Okay, we know to some degree that they were struck from record, and if anyone brings them up, unless they are a Primarch, they usually get dead, usually pretty quickly and psychically from an unseen force that's been spying on them since the day they were born. I know the general theory is that it's because they are disgraced, but I think it's time to interject a new theory into that. I think it might just be because that's how the Emperor deals with these kinds of things, as the Chaos-corrupted legions didn't get struck from the record nearly as harshly as the two lost Primarchs. So it's probably because that's just how the Emperor dealt with traitors, losers, or dead Primarchs, instead of just what we did with the traitor Primarchs and their legions.
Which, by the way,
in a
kind of
to show
insane.
that the Primarchs are invincible to the Great Crusade that he was planning, instead of allowing them to die in front of the people that he's trying to govern, you know? Though there is the betrayal angle that comes with these things, so that still is possible. I'm just saying that it's not nearly as extreme as you think it is. So with some of the information I have read about, there is also the matter of the Rangda genocide, which occurred relatively before all of the Primarchs being discovered. And because of this, it led to what many people believe is the death of one of these Primarchs. It's heavily implied in the Horus Heresy that that's kind of what happened, but it's not 100% confirmed. I know a lot of people tend to think the Rangda are mind controllers or a massive cover-up, as it was actually just a Primarch rebellion, but we have no way of knowing this, and it's mostly just fan speculation. It does make a little sense, because not only is it inferred to that one of the Primarchs died during the genocide, but they might have been killed by Leman Russ, because Leman Russ has stated that he has a bit of history with killing other Primarchs. I will hazard a guess that it was the Primarch of the Second Legion that was killed by Russ. The reason why? Because in the Dark Cells on Terra, there is a cell labeled Subject 11, which I thought would have been a cheeky way of neither confirming nor denying it was either, because if it was the number 11 written with 2 1s, it could also be interpreted as 2 in Roman numerals, but no, it's actually written as XI, which is 11, and that kind of kills my funny hypothesis. But regardless, there is a cell containing someone who might be the mind-broken Primarch of the 11th Legion, or it could be an attempt to clone the 11th Primarch, and they are just kept in there for unknown purposes. You know, when Terra gets assailed for the final time and there is no hope, you might as well just let everything out and let shit sort itself out, you know? But yeah, there are a lot of theories out there, like the Rangda were the Crave, and they had mind-controlling powers that could control Primarchs if they were like super strong, because there is a precedent in the past of Super Xenos being able to pretty much manhandle normal Space Marines, like the Howling with the Cacodominus and so on. And it had to have been such a severe threat that the Dark Angels and the Space Wolves as an entire legion were sent after them to destroy it. So there are a lot lot of different ways of looking at it. I know that theoretically how Gene Seed works, there are still elements of the two legions around, as the remnants of their legion were put into, I believe, the Imperial Fist as well as the Ultramarines, which likely means that they had an incredibly stable Gene Seed with very little deviation or mutation to it, so they couldn't really be picked up out of a line. And because of how Space Marines technically reproduce, with the Gene Seed being extracted from a corpse and then being placed into a new Marine, and then upon their death, that Gene Seed is extracted again, that means theoretically the Gene Seed from that legion is still technically around if it has been recovered. Now, they could have been wiped out entirely and then just over the years just never had the Gene Seed be replaced, but it would be interesting to see if Belisarius called it something like that. Like, my headcanon was like possibly the Soul Drinkers were a part of that, where they might have been just the unstable Gene Seed of a Primarch that no longer really exists and is never really acknowledged. We don't truly know what their progenitor is. I know it's stated in the lore in the Soul Drinkers book that we cannot confirm that it's Imperial Fist because they don't match Rogel Doran's Gene Seed, but in the most recent books, in a small short story for the Soul Drinkers, it's confirmed that they were a member of the Imperial Fist as early as like M34, M33, which means they could be a second founding chapter. But
this is getting confusing. Which Primarch are we talking about? We're talking about the Lost Primarch. So I'm a bit confused now, right? Like, would you choose the 2nd or 11th Legion for your custom legion? I don't know. I barely know anything about them. I'm just a little like, waving out Z. I don't know how I feel about this quite yet. Cause like, yeah, if even if the Primarchs are gone, the Legion should still be around, right? They get absorbed, then, yeah, I'm so confused, guys.
We don't know. So that's why I think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of fun to fantasize about, you know? Where in general, you don't fully know if there is or is not a chapter of Space Marine that has traits that are linked to a progenitor that no one knows about, that are just put into a chapter that makes no sense. I am looking at you, Dark Krakens. A chapter of Salamander's successors obsessed with water? Yeah, okay, that tracks, I guess. But regardless, this is kind of the compendium of all we know. In short, these are all the most obvious theories we have about the Lost Primarchs, and I think that's interesting. Now, I'm gonna give my hot take here, because I know a lot of people would disagree with me, especially because of aspects of this research that I do. I tend to watch a lot of other YouTubers' videos to kind of confirm ideas that I might be shaky on to see if they have found citations and sources that I might not know. And a lot of other lore tubers who play the tabletop agree that the Primarchs that have been lost should come back, and I disagree. I think that the Lost Primarch should stay gone forever. And my answer really isn't that nuanced. It is simply put, just creativity in a box is kind of how 40k has existed and subsisted up to this point. You are given this idea that there are 20 Primarchs and over 1,000 chapters and unfathomable amounts of chaos warbands that you could look into. So with that kind of blueprint of this is how a Space Marine is supposed to be built, you can inject whatever flavor you want into it. Say you don't like any of the chapters or legions on display, you can actually just make your own, and that's kind of the fun part of it. It is the creative aspect of unlimited freedom, but placing it in this kind of open-ended box that is, you can make a Space Marine chapter that has to follow these guidelines. Same with Primarchs. If you want to say that your chapter, your fan chapter, is a successor of the original Lost Primarch, then who's to say no? Except for some nerd that you're playing with who's a bit too sweaty and plays Blood Angels.
Yeah.
I swear it's always Blood Angels players. I don't know why. But
is it
I don't have a problem
Blood
with this. And I
Angels
think
players?
even further than that, I think it's a good thing, because having people create more fan content is better than having people create less, you know what I mean? With all that being said, I know a lot of people say that the story of the Primarchs, especially the Lost ones, doesn't really fit this criteria anymore, because all the chapters have been discovered. People show that their preferences are, I just want to play the chapters that are on display, and if I want to make something, I'll make something, and whatever. But I disagree. It defeats the purpose of what original Warhammer was, and I'm not someone who's so conservative with my ideals about the hobby that I think that we should always kind of base our template off of Rogue Trader, because after starting reading that book, holy shit, that's wild. But I think that people are too uppity about how things should be creative. I think just the act of...
Wait, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? Is this legit? Is this canon? What?
Holy shit, that's
That's
wild.
real?
But I think that people are too uppity about how things should be creative. I think just the act of being creative in this fan base should be applauded, because I'm kind of an idiot. I just read the lore and explain it off to all of you, and that's how I get my creative expressive needs out. But people being able to creatively express themselves in a way where all of their ideas are put into this chapter that they put all this effort into, I find is way more endearing than anything I could ever put out there. Now, say what you want, I still think that my favorite video I've ever put out was either the Marauders video or the video on the Promethean Kings, where I just gaslight my entire audience into thinking that something's real. By the way, please go watch the Promethean Kings video. That is probably one of my favorite jokes I've ever told before. But I think that creativity and having a creative outlet, especially in this hobby, is a very important aspect to the hobby, as it gives us a place to unite. Everybody can be like, oh yeah, I made a successor chapter of the Imperial Fists, and this successor chapter is based around this gimmick, and then someone else with completely different beliefs and ideals can be like, oh, I did something similar, here's my chapter. And regardless of what your views are above the game, you can unite under that. And I think that solidarity through that kind of creative purpose is one of the most wholesome things about 40k, as weird as it is. I think trying to state if the Primarchs should come back, or trying to state that the Primarchs shouldn't come back, even though I said where my opinions firmly lie, I think it's just a moot point. It doesn't matter. It's an anachronism. It's not really an important point to make, because if you think so or if you think not, I think what matters is the discussion and the creative parts of talking about it. And that's where I stand. I think that the Lost Primarchs themselves are a beautiful sentiment of just make whatever, and whatever you think is canon is canon. Might not be correct in the lore, but it's there. I have played against so many friends who have played Angry Marines, which are not a canon chapter, I mean, arguably, but I think that it's cool that people can come together and make these kinds of things, and even if we disagree on how the lore should be done, at the end of the day, roll your dice, move your mice, and as long as the other person on the other end of the table isn't a dickhead, fuck it, right? Just play the game and have fun.
That's true.
I know this kind of got a little lost in the weeds towards the end here, but I want to know what you guys think about the Lost Primarchs, where they possibly went, and your idea of if they should come back or not, because I know it's a bit of a complicated topic to discuss. So,
do you guys think the Lost Primarchs should come back? Maybe we need to delve more into this when I'm playing Rogue Trader.
Hi besties, it's me, Miwa, and if you're enjoying today's video, please consider subscribing, okay? Like, please, 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 times a billion. I'm like, really asking this of you, Nick.
But do you guys think they need to come back? I don't think they need to come back. I think he's right. They don't need to come back. I think that maybe release like some information on the one that's canonically dead, but maybe the other one doesn't need to come back. But honestly, I don't think either of them need to come back, you know? Yeah, I think the aspect of the lore is more like having like the lore is a lot more fun. But like, I think it's fine. The mystery is what makes them interesting. That's true. That is very true. It is the mystery of it. It is the romance of it that makes them interesting.